So, the Elizabethans and the wider world. So, we're going to look at the nature and significance of England's connections to the wider world. So, first of all, we'll look at imperial ambition. So, the motives and achievements of Elizabethan adventurers. John Dee had a vision of a British Empire, and it was to rival Spain's and provide practical help for explorers. So John Dee was an advisor to the Queen on science and astrology, and in 1577 he presented a plan to shift the balance of power from Spain to England, which appealed to Elizabeth. The Queen encouraged overseas exploration, and she wanted an empire to rival Spain. Elizabethan adventurers expanded English interests across the globe. Spain had built up a huge empire in Central and South America, and Dee proposed that English adventurers should search for new routes to the rich markets of China and the East Indies. He advised the Queen to establish colonies, which is land taken and ruled by a foreign power, in North America and claim a right to rule there, and he called his vision the British Empire. So Dee also produced maps and books to help with navigation as well. Our next adventurer is Francis Drake, and he became a national hero because he circumnavigated the globe. So he was the first Englishman to sail around the world. On his way, Drake claimed territory and he captured Spanish treasure. So when he returned in September 1580, he returned with vast amounts of pillaged treasure for investors, the Queen, and for himself. Whilst on his exploration, he landed in California and he claimed the territory for Elizabeth, calling it New Albion. He headed west across the Pacific towards the Cape of Good Hope, to the Spice Islands, and he traded linen cloth for clothes, ginger, and pimento. These were all luxury items that were really sought after back in England. And there he is on his return at Plymouth, looking like a hero. Right, he was seen as a hero for his adventures. Next part to this story of the wider world, let's look at Roanoke. So Roanoke was England's attempt at an American colony. So Gilbert, a man called Gilbert, claimed territory in an area called Newfoundland, but he failed to establish a colony. Humphrey Gilbert, as a Protestant Englishman, was driven by his hatred of the Spanish. So thinking about reasons why men took on the role of an adventurer and exploration, this is his reason. Okay, so the hatred of the Spanish. Gilbert searched for a sea route around the top of North America to provide England with a trade route to China. And his first attempt in 1579 was a disaster, and only the ship captained by his younger half-brother, Walter Raleigh, made it across the Atlantic. On a second voyage in June 1583, that was more successful. He claimed land in Newfoundland for the Queen by digging a piece of turf and erecting a post with the arms of England engraved in lead. He did not establish a colony, however, and the land was barren, the climate was cold, and food was scarce, so it was not successful. On his ship, one of his ships was wrecked, killing 80 men, and the others returned home. Gilbert himself drowned on the return voyage. So this brings me on to Walter Raleigh. So Raleigh had made plans for a colony at a place called Roanoke in Virginia. So Walter Raleigh thought America could be the gateway to the riches of Asia, wanted to find a trade route through America. As a loyal courtier, he hoped to find silver and gold for Queen Elizabeth, and also wealth and fame for himself. Another reason for exploration. So Roanoke, it had a natural harbour, and the local people, the Algonquian, were very friendly. And he thought that that Roanoke, on his initial survey in April 1584, would be a great place to found England's first colony. So the territory was named Virginia in honour of the Virgin Queen, and the Queen did not want to part with her favourite, who was Raleigh at the time. So Richard Grenville and Ralph Lane led the expedition of 600 soldiers, sailors, and colonists. They took a scientist, Thomas Harriot, and an artist, John White, to study and record the people, landscapes, and wildlife. So, just thinking of a key point here. So, despite ambitious plans, no lasting English colonies were established in America during Elizabeth's reign, because ultimately the Roanoke colony did fail. But they did learn from their mistakes, and it paved the way for later, more successful attempts. That's a really key point to remember. So much was learnt from early failures. So Harriet and White turned their careful record into a book, and this helped the next colonisation attempt to succeed in Jamestown, 1607. Raleigh's next expedition was to the city of Manoa in Guyana, South America. This also failed, but his record of it, the discovery of the large, rich, and beautiful empire of Guyana, encouraged later attempts at empire building. So, short term, America was a failure in terms of establishing a colony. However, long term, it was seen as more of a success because of the records they brought back. You know, the advice and what they learnt from their expeditions. So, the last part then to the wider world is looking at trade with the East, so including first contacts with India. So there was a demand for luxury goods from India, and at this point in time, it was Portugal who actually dominated these trading routes. However, wealthy Elizabethans wanted luxury goods from India and China, such as silk and cotton, jewels, perfumes, clothing, and furnishings. Spices such as cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, ginger, pepper were used for preserving and flavouring food. So if you remember, the Elizabethans did not have refrigeration. They were important to preserve food. And they fetched high prices in England. So again, reasons why, reasons for exploration, wealth, religion, but also, these trading routes would bring a lot of wealth as well. So in past centuries, such goods came overland via the Mediterranean. Portuguese traders started to use the sea routes around southern Africa. Spain invaded Portugal in 1580, leading to fears that the spice trade would be disrupted. As a result, London merchants formed the Turkey Company in 1581, and they were granted a monopoly, so they were the sole right to trade in the Eastern Mediterranean. There's two key individuals that you need to know about when it comes to the wider world. One is Ralph Fitch, which we'll look at now, and the other one is James Lancaster. So Ralph Fitch, he established England's first direct links with the Mughal Empire. So the Turkey Company sent Ralph Fitch to research trade opportunities in India, Southeast Asia, and China. He carried letters of introduction from the Queen to the Mughal and Chinese emperors, the leaders of the greatest civilizations in the world. He set off from Falmouth with 4 other men on March 1583. Only Fitch returned. They reached Basra in May. John Eldred stayed behind to trade. In Hormuz, a Portuguese trading station, They were arrested as spies and taken to Goa, a Portuguese colony in India. In Goa, they were released, but James Story joined the Jesuit college there. They carried on, reaching the court of the Mughal emperor at Agra, and a man called William Leeds was so impressed he stayed to work as a jeweller. Someone called John Newbery returned to England overland, and he was not heard of again. Fitch carried on alone. At the Portuguese fort of Malacca, he not only allowed to continue into the South China Sea, so he headed home. He arrived back in England in April 1591, 8 years after he had left. So, Fitch's account of his travels showed the opportunities available in England in the East. So Fitch learned a lot about the wealth and trade of India, China, and the Spice Islands. He saw gems and spices, cloths, dyes, and drugs that were easily available in India. He wrote about the people, customs, and goods he had seen. The merchants in England were very interested in the trade opportunities he described, and also worried about losing out to competitors, particularly the Dutch, in exploiting them. So the last person that we're going to look at today is someone called James Lancaster, and he's a really significant figure in terms of the wider world, especially when we're looking at Elizabethan adventurers in the East, because the East India Company was established due to him. And the East India Company, it changed England's trade forever. So in April 1601, so this is quite, this is towards the end of Elizabeth's reign. So in April 1601, James Lancaster was given command of the East India Company's first fleet. His expedition established England's first trading post in the East in a place called Java in 1602. And here, English ships began to bring home spices just as the Portuguese and Dutch merchants were doing. Lancaster's voyage from 1601 to 1603 was an important moment in British history. So Dr. Dee's dream of this British Empire had begun to be realised. 200 years later, the East India Company was the biggest trading company in the world. So a really, really significant achievement towards the end of Elizabeth's reign when we're looking at the wider world and trade with the East.